Hi everyone, it's Laura here for SugarPea Designs, and in today's video I'm going to share with you an easy trick to create a beautiful frosty sky for your winter cards. I started my card from the sky background itself, and on my desk here I have some watercolor cardstock that I taped to a cutting board with some painter's tape. The cardstock is cut slightly larger than an A2 size because I'm going to die cut it with my background dies later on. And I also have my Gansai Tambi watercolors, which I first activated with some water and then I'm going to mix on my glass mat. Before applying the colors to my background, I'm going to wet it with some clean water, and this is the watercolor wet on wet technique, where you have a wet piece of paper, then you paint with your watercolors. For the background itself, I'm not doing any fancy painting whatsoever. This doesn't require any watercolor skills. All that I'm doing is I am mixing some blues and some purples on my glass mat, and then I am dropping them in random areas of my background. I'm not worrying whether I am getting a smooth result at all. Actually, we do want a lot of texture on our sky, so that makes life easier for us, because you can see that, you can just basically drop in your colors randomly. And the only thing I'm paying attention to is to have a little bit of color variation in the sky. So as you can see, I'm not going for a flat wash, but I am adding a little bit of purple here and there and then some blues in the areas in between so that I have some nice interest on the sky. And the trick that makes the whole background come together is to add a little bit of table salt to your watercolors as the water is still wet, so as your background hasn't dried yet, and then you don't need to do anything else. You can put it aside to dry and move on and start stamping and coloring your images. The stamp set that I used today is the Hey Winter stamp set from the September 2019 release by SugarPea Designs. This release was very popular and I think it was phenomenal. The items are now back in stock in the SugarPea store, so if there was something you didn't manage to grab, because items sold out really quickly, now is the time for you to check them out and add them to your stash. Coming back to the card, I did some stamping with VersaFine Onyx Black ink on Bristol Smooth cardstock, and then I heat embossed the images with clear embossing powder because I will be doing some coloring with my Z Clean Color Real Brush markers. These are water-based markers and you can blend them with each other and with water. Bristol Smooth cardstock is a great paper to use with these markers because it makes the blending really easy, and also I like the effect of having the heat embossed lines because they create a little bit of shine and dimension on the images. And in general, it makes working with water-based media a little bit more easy because the embossed lines form some sort of a barrier between different areas of your images so that you can go ahead and color them without having to worry about the paints bleeding through. As for the coloring, I am adding some shadows to the bear with a cool gray marker. I am adding them as if the light was coming from the top right of the screen, so I have some shadows on the left portion of its body and on the bottom areas too. There are also some cast shadows by his arms and his muzzle, and as you can see, hopefully because it's a little bit faint at the moment, where his belly is, I have sort of created the line to make the belly look even more rounded. I am applying my markers directly to paper and then I am blending them out with a water brush, so this is actually loaded with some clean water. I wanted to deepen the shadows a little bit, so I took a darker gray marker, but because this was a little bit too dark, what I did is I scribbled it on top of my glass mat and then I picked it up with my paintbrush and applied it to the paper this way, so that I could modulate the intensity of this darker gray that I also used to color in the noses of the bears. For the scarf and the rest of the accessories, I'm going to use a mixture of hot pinks, teal blues and some grays. I wanted the palette on my images to contrast a little bit against the background, but I still didn't want to use complementary colors. So my sky background will have some muted blues and purples. And to create some contrast, I decided to use some blues and some pinks, so analogous colors, but in a brighter version. Where I needed extra colors for my presents, I used the cool gray markers that I used for the bears. These are neutrals, so they don't really add much to the color palette, and also tie in the presents to the bears on the card. And as a last step, I colored the leaves on my trees with a dull green and the trunks with a brown marker. Once I was done coloring my images, I used the coordinating dies to the SugarPea Designs Hey Winter stamp set to die cut all the images. I am securing the dies in place using some washi tape so that they don't shift while I pass the paper through my die cutting machine. And at this point, because my background was basically dry, I could go ahead, brush off the salt and remove it from my cutting board. There was a little bit of residual moisture that I dried up with a heat gun. And then, to create the front panel for my card, I used the scallop rectangle die in the SugarPea Designs Card Front Element Builder set to die cut this panel. And I really think that the result is so gorgeous and it was so easy to create, so definitely try out this technique. I think it will be great for skies on your winter cards, but even just for an abstract background on your cards. Next, I die cut some blue cardstock using the rectangle die in the Card Front Element Builder set by SugarPea Designs. This cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, but because I didn't like the way this particular shade of blue looked against my sky background, I decided to blend some chipped sapphire distress oxide on the edges, and I think that the result is much better this way. Using yet another die in the Card Front Element Builder set, together with that scallop rectangle die that we used on the sky, I created these two hue panels, and I blended some distress oxide in nude lavender on them to create a little bit of shadow on my snowy hues. And if you haven't noticed, basically I created my entire card base only with dies from the Card Front Element Builder set. It is a really great basic die set to have, and it allows to create a lot of different designs, not only scene cards. As a last step for my sky, I decided to create the effect of a snowfall, so I diluted some white acrylic paint using some water, and I am picking it up with a paintbrush and flicking the paintbrush all over the panel to create some white droplets. And then I can finally go ahead and start assembling my card, starting from the hues that I'm going to adhere with some strong double-sided adhesive to the bottom of this watercolor panel. And then I can go ahead and build my scene by adhering all the images. If you have seen my videos, you know by now that for images I tend to prefer liquid adhesive because I have a little bit of time to move things around while the glue is still wet. And the glue I'm using today is Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. I filled in the scene by adhering the trees behind each of the two hues. And then, using that same strong double-sided tape, I adhered my watercolor panel to that blue card background. I made sure to get it as centered and as straight as I could, and then I moved on and started working on the last element for this card, which is the sentiment. The greeting will read Merry Christmas, and for the word Merry I used one of the dies from the latest SugarPea design release. And for the word Christmas, I used the Everyday Sentiments stamp set and the Sentiment Strips dies. I die cut the word Merry and my sentiment strip out of that same blue cardstock that I used for my card base, and then I heat embossed the word Christmas with wet embossing powder. As a last step, I blended chipped sapphire on the blue cardstock, so both on the sentiment strip and on the word Merry. And you saw me do it just a couple of seconds ago. I also blended some distress oxide in Nude Lavender at the bottom of that white die cut, which will be the outline of the word Mary. Because the sentiment die cut is so thin and delicate, I'm going to use a glue pen to adhere it to the outline. An alternative would be to use sticky adhesive or any double-sided adhesive sheets that you can use to basically turn this die cut into a little sticker, but for me the glue pen worked well enough. I used again Nouveau Deluxe adhesive to adhere the word Mary and the little strip with the heat embossed Christmas greeting, and that finished off my card. And here you can see the final result. I think it turned out really cute and I really loved the effect of the salt on that sky background. I think it's just perfect for winter cards. And that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video and I hope I inspired you to create with the SugarPea Designs Hey Winter stamp set. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiration. Thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.